Welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library's Meet the Author program. We are excited to have author and philanthropist Daofeng He join us to discuss his book, The Human Calling. Daofeng is an entrepreneur, economist, philanthropist, policy researcher, and can now add author to his list of accomplishments. He has appeared on numerous press outlets for his COVID-19 rescue efforts through the Daofeng and Angela Foundation. He has received the President's Volunteer Service Award from the White House for his outstanding service to fellow Americans. Daofeng will discuss the rise and fall of Eastern and Western philosophical history with his new book, The Human Calling. He will also be joined by his son, Stanley, who will interpret or encourage additional questions and information. Please welcome Stanley and Daofeng He.
Hi, I am Daofeng He. Yeah, thank you so much for you participating in this meeting. Yeah, it's a very special meeting.
Okay, so and my name is Stanley. I am the author's son. I'll be here today mainly to translate if there is a need. I will start by introducing my father's background before he gets into talking about his book. So my father was born in 1956. He was born in Yunnan, one of the most rural area of China. He studied economics at Fudan University. After enduring the Great Leap and the Cultural Revolution. After studying in university, he joined a central government think tank in China and participated in many agricultural and economic reforms. Back then, his dream was to change China, to improve the people's lives in his country through political reform. So, and it's through that time, you know, China's economy was growing by opening up to the West and the rest of the world. However, in 1989, the Tiananmen Square event happened, and that event, when the army opened fire on students, it showed my father that China will only, at that time, will only reform economically, but will not reform politically. And that was a big disappointment to him. So he decided to quit the government and become an entrepreneur. Around 2000, China was applying for the WTO. And in joining the WTO, China promised to reduce the number of state-owned enterprises. China promised to promote free market competition and to build a civil society. And this big event ignited my father's passion for reform again. He saw this as another big opportunity for China to become a civil society through social reforms. So he joined a nonprofit organization called China Foundation for Poverty Alleviation as a volunteer, as its CEO. The organization was a government-run non-government organization, which is a very oxymoron, but that's how China was like. He, as acting CEO, he turned it into an organization that solely operates on free market competition, is not a part of the government, and he basically grew it to one of the largest NGOs in China. At the same time, he also built one of the largest micro-lending organization under the CFPA, helping having hundreds of millions of Chinese women in rural areas to access financial services. So things were good, but it's really until during the 2008, right after the Beijing Olympics, gradually my father feels there's a hubris in the air. There is hubris everywhere in China. People are, instead of being humble and working hard, people are thinking that China is becoming the greatest country in the world, while deliberately ignoring how this country is still very far away from becoming a civil society. More corruptions happened. The number of state-owned enterprises actually went up instead of what was promised during when China joined WTO, and more propagandas about how great the country is to its citizens has grew, and it's at that time my father's second time around, his dream of reform has met with disappointment. And it is during that time he started asking, what is the meaning of my life? What is the meaning of in anyone's life? Why am I here? He began to seek answers and start to research in starting with Eastern philosophy and then into Western philosophies and religions. And he spent almost a decade doing this research and started writing The Human Calling around the time when he retired in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my introduction.
你说了是吧？
你就直接说就好。
那我还是说是英语吧。
OK.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I want to my English is not my mother language, so it's please pardon me. Yeah, maybe the pronunciation was structure a little bit of problem, but I still want to say in English. I want to talk a lot of things in this book, but generally the human history is so complicated and controversial. But I try to conclude it is into the human calling and human ability. So that is for the human ability, as a human, they use three kind of tools. The first one is language, communication. Second one is organization, innovation. And the third one is technological innovation. So that is three the tools for people to develop the human ability in the history. But that is the communication, innovations of communication, organization, and technology. The human being always creates the being, the rich and rich the material lifestyle. Like today, it's where internet, the AI was and a lot of new technology. However, but the human being could not got rid of some disturbing, like violent harms in the human society. So therefore, the human history, the countless sages have tried to look up the sky and searching for some answer from heaven.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So let me just chime in because so what he's saying is he divided the human history into the story of the human ability and the story of human calling, right? Since the beginning of history, humans has always been improving their abilities to do things through various different technologies, including 组织是吧？
这个文字就沟
including
通
language and communication,
组织创新，
including the organization and organizational innovation,
还有技术创新。
and technological innovation, and these in every era of history, in every stage of history, these three areas has been pushed forward by humans, and it has pushed our material life up and up, improving it again and again, consistently. But what it has not allowed people to do is to prevent war, prevent violence, prevent the harms that people do to each other. That has been consistent throughout history, and that has not been changed whatsoever, no matter what type of technology or innovation we have at the moment. And therefore, this leads to the stories of the human calling, where is people facing this kind of situation, they look up to the sky, to something beyond this world, to seek answers. Yeah.
So I speak in Chinese. 这个那这样的人类在这个历史过程中呢，无论是东方还是西方，在追求人的能够的这个历史上，他们用的手段是一样的，都是在信息交流、组织创新和技术创新上下功夫，他们是同样的。
Okay, in any culture, throughout history, when in either Eastern or Western history, when people pursue the increase of their human abilities, both East and West have focused on organization innovation, technological innovation, and innovation in the usage of language and communication.
但是在寻找这个 human calling 的这个道路上，东方西方显现出了完全不一样的道路。
But when the East and West, embarked their journey on finding human calling, the East and West basically took very, very different routes.
西方从一开始走向的路，就是他们在寻找真理，而且他们寻找的真理是 invisible 的 intangible 是看不见的东西才是真理，看得见的现象世界不是真理。
In Western society, when they start looking for the human calling, they began with looking for the truth, and the truth they were seeking is the truth that is beyond this materialistic world, is an eternal thing that cannot be seen, cannot be touched, is invisible to us.
东方寻找的道路，从一开始，他们只相信眼睛看得见的，看得见的才是真的，看不见的东西是不存在的。
And the Eastern civilization, they differed by when they were seeking the truth, they were more seeking what is real, or they were really just seeking reality. Anything they can see, they are able to see, to touch, to smell. When they're visible and tangible, they see that as the truth. But then they do not see the invisible truth behind this visible world.
所以东方从一开始3000年以上，一开始东方走上的路就是一条实用主义的道路。
So therefore, even though there are more than 3,000 years of history in the Eastern civilizations, because they started by seeking the visible only, the Eastern history, the Eastern religions, went on a path that ultimately leads to pragmatism.
那这条道路就是说一个实用主义的路，在东方来说是深入到所有人的他们的文化血液之中，已经坚守了数千年。
And this pragmatism, this ultimate pragmatism, is deeply present in all aspects of Eastern history, culture, all aspects of people's daily lives.
可是西方呢？西方走的路是一条理想主义的路，他们找到的那个真理，从古希腊到这个犹太的信仰到基督教信仰，他们寻找的真理，这个唯一的真理，真正值得相信的真理是上帝，是 Jesus， 而不是那些现象，不是表面上的东西。所以他们对于实用主义是深恶痛绝的，从文化根源上来讲。
Now, in contrast, the Western civilization, when they were seeking the truth, 寻找什么？
就寻找真理嘛，寻找真理。
When they were seeking the truth,
因为它是不可见的，它是你看你。
Yeah, their truth is based on not pragmatism instead of a sort of idealism that drives them toward seeking the invisible. So from the Greek to the Judaism to Christianity, they all arrive their ultimate answer to God, to Jesus, and to things that they cannot see. And he believed at the deepest part of the Western civilization, that deepest part is not about pragmatism and practicalities.
所以西方当发展到基督教文明的时候，他所创造的这个最核心的文化，就是对人的这个自由，就是这个平等的自由权的一个最深刻的思考。
And because of this, and if we take a snapshot at when Christianity was formed in the West, at that time, it was the Western search for the human calling for their ideal accumulated to a point where the biggest emphasis was on what is liberty, what is the rights that each individual have before the truth, before God.
就每一个人的自由是因为上帝创造他，他被造而拥有自由权。
And at the end, in Christianity, everyone's liberty comes from the fact that they are created by God. They have the liberty because they were created.
但是这种自由权，由于是每一个人都是自由的，因此它是以平等为前提的，就是因为它只有每一个人是同样平等的权利，他才可能这个自由才可能不侵犯他人的自由。
But because everyone is given a freedom, is given a liberty by God, then the equality must be a president of this liberty is with the equality from God. We can make sure that the liberty that each person have does not infiltrate the liberty of another person.
那为了保护人的这个平等自由权呢，社会必须去创造一种制度来保证它的公平和正义。
And in order to protect this equal liberty, the society must come up with a common way, agreed upon way or protocol to protect everyone's liberty and to protect justice.
而所有这一切都是来自于上帝的最根源，因为上帝是一个 righteousness 的一个公义的上帝。
and all these things, the liberty, the equality, the justice, the source of it all come from a righteous God.
那我们今天这个全球的这个核心价值观，它就来自于这个基督教文明，大家都熟知的。
And the core universal values that we talk about today, equality, freedom, all of these fairness, justice, all of these concepts actually originated from the Christian, the Christian thinking, the Christian definition of these terms back in the days.
因为这里就是上帝，就是他是最大的公共，他的公共性是涵盖全人类的，他的爱，他的创造是爱全人类所有的人啊，因此这个公共性是最大的，他不是只是一个人，他对所有的人都给予爱，所以这个是一个才形成了这个全球的这样一种价值观。
And God is love. God's love is all-encompassing. Everyone is equal and free before God's love, and it's God's love that formed the foundation of a universal value system that is becoming generally accepted across the globe in the modern society.
东方的实用主义呢，是说所谓公平，所谓这些东西，它是不注重人，没有个人的，没有个人的自由、平等、公平、正义这些概念，这些概念在东方文化里是没有的。所以东方这最核心的要素就是说，它是一个实用主义概念。实用主义就是当我对我有利的时候，我就做；当我对我不利的时候，我就不做。那我要做，相互之间所有的东西就只有一个交易原则，就是交易，就是在交易中来实现，就是说，不管是任何一种情况，它是按照实用主义来衡量我们的行为方式的。
Okay, so let's look at the East, right? In the Eastern civilization, there was no concept of the liberty, the freedom of an individual. There is, in fact, at a deep philosophical level, there really is no emphasis on the value of an individual. Therefore, Eastern philosophy, a lot of it is based on pragmatism, about what pragmatically works for the general population. And another thing about the Eastern philosophy is people tend to live in the following way, which is if there is certain thing that is beneficial to them, they will protect it, they will support it. When it's not beneficial, and they will go against it. But during this process, people change, and there is no eternal value or eternal stance on a value.
因此，他们就把这个信仰就从个人身上，就从从可以看得见的这个就塑造出一个人，把人变成神，这样就是东方就走进了一个造神的这样一种文化，就是他们的神是人造的，不是一个看不见的，而是一个看得见的神。
And because life to and the events of life to the Eastern, to the people in the Eastern history, a lot of it is transactional. What happens at the same time is the idolization of people, idolization of things is also a common occurrence in Eastern history, where people will idolize living humans, idolize certain people with power, and worship them, hoping for something in return, which is transactional in nature.
那这样一种情形下，那么这样一种神，在东方的神代表的是一个集体，一个国家，或者说一个这样的一个共同体。那这样就是东西方其实这个就在这一点上，就从根本上是一个走了两条不同的路。 就是一个是实用主义的路，一个走的是一个就是以上帝为中心的这样的生活的这样两条的这种路线。但是到了这一次，就是近代以来，就是在全球化的浪潮中，东方和西方都
therefore, because the Eastern civilization, they find their human calling through idols, right? Through gods. They not an eternal God, but a God that can be made from anyone, any sort of deity or any sort of source that they define, and they want to have a transactional nature with that quote unquote God or deity, which by nature that is transactional, right? Therefore, certain deities or God really just represents the interests of a group of people, whether it's a big group or a small group. And this is in direct contrast with the monotheistic God in Western civilization, where the God is all-encompassing to everyone.
就是那简而言之，西方的 human calling 其实是人对上帝的 calling 的一个响应，东方的 human calling 是人对他们的造的那个神、那个皇帝的响应。
Okay, so the West, so the human calling, right? The ultimate human calling that the West has settled on is a calling that is answered to God. It's a response to
God.
To God. It's a response to a calling from God. And the Eastern calling is a response, or Eastern, they respond to the calling from the man-made God, the man-made idols that they have manufactured, right? Which and a lot of these gods, they're not eternal, they're temporary. For example, in today's age, we can say that Chairman Xi Jinping is a man-made God that people are currently worshiping.
那这样的话，这个是东西方文化是一个完全的一个就是不可，这个是最核心的一个区分。但是在这一场全球化的洪流当中，由于我们把重心放到了科学技术身上，全球就兴起了一场科学技术的崇拜。
Now, what we're seeing in recent decades, globalization has brought a wave of emphasis into technological development, technological progress, technological innovation. And this has brought a wave of technological worship.
由于越来越多的人把他们这种关注的重心，把这个崇拜的重心放到了科学技术上，因此这个科学技术的崇拜逐渐在取代对上帝的崇拜。
And in both East and West, increasingly more and more people are now worshiping technology. And in the West, this change is so profound because we're seeing a lot of people change from worshiping the all-encompassing God, the righteous God that is invisible, to the technologies that are visible.
那这个就变成了一个，就是在西方整个世界有一个趋势，现在被称之为世俗化的一个浪潮。
So secularization.
Yeah.
So this process is the process of secularization that has been happening for decades in the West.
年轻一代逐渐的被手机这种移动互联网这类新的各种各样的新技术工具所征服，把他们的时间越来越多的花在这种新技术的崇拜上，因此这个社会就开始离开了上帝。
Now, younger generations now growing up by surrounding by this new technology, now paying more attention and have their life led by the development of these technologies, whether in their career, in their personal life, or in their daily life. And this is increasingly bringing people away, taking people away from God at a faster pace.
那在这个世俗化的浪潮过程里边，那人们事实上就逐渐的变成了一个实用主义。
And so during this process of secularization, this process of increasing technology worship, people gradually become more pragmatic.
那这时候我们会看到这个传媒、广告，还有政客，所有这些人就开始重新来解释他们所理解的自由、平等、公平和正义。
Now, because this tilt from the idealism, right, about God, about the human calling, towards a pragmatism that feels, how people define the human calling. Because of this change, companies, corporations, politicians, essentially anyone who have an influence now has the chance and has taken on an opportunity to use words such as freedom, liberty, justice, fairness, to hijack these terms and to redefine them, and by attracting people who are seeking a certain pragmatic end with their own definitions.
所以今天的自由就等于说是变成了自由是对就是自由是可以不负责任的，自由不是一个与他人一起平等的这样一种自由，然后公平也不是上帝所定义那个公平，正义也不是源于上帝的公义的那样的定义，这个定义被解释成了一种完全实用主义的一些概念。
So, in today's world, justice, liberty, freedom, justice, fairness is no longer carries the definition that it once did, which was a definition that derived from a righteous God. In today's world is defined in so many different ways, and is defined. People define it in a way that is beneficial to them, without thinking about, the responsibility that each one of us have towards other people in this world, when we keep the gift of liberty and justice from God.
那这样的话，东方和西方两大实用主义就合流了。就西方的实用主义就和东方几千年的实用主义合成一个河流里去了。
And what we're seeing is basically there's a confluence of the newly formed pragmatism in the West that is fueled by secularization and technology. Together, that is flowing into a confluence with the pragmatism that has been in the East for thousands of years.
那这个对西方对美国的这种损害，其实是非常非常之大。
And now the Western world, especially the United States, now is under heavy influence by not only by its own pragmatism, but also by the pragmatism, the philosophy, the pragmatic philosophies and ideas that were deep rooted in the Eastern civilization, the Eastern cultures.
就相当于现在在我们美国正在把我们几千年传统文化根基里边最核心的 基督上帝定义的那个核心价值观，再把它扔到垃圾桶里。但是呢，现在却在向东方的实用主义学习。
So what made the East and the West different from the East was its pursuit of its own ideal version of the human calling, the seeking of the invisible truth. That was the foundation of the modern world, of everything that we the science and technology, the universal values that we agree on today. But now the Western countries and Western cultures are now throwing that away because now they're lured by the pragmatism from inside and out, and by the Eastern cultures.
实际上，从这个角度来看这个世界的话，很容易理解今天在中国所发生的那些事儿。中国所发生的一切的事，你就非常非常容易理解为什么中国可以把人用一个健康码就可以管得让人就是说完全所有的人都跟着他跑，所有都不会动，因为那个就是他们的神，那个皇帝就是他们的神。为什么在西方做不到，在东方很容易做到？这个你一看就知道了，所以你非常非常理解中国现在所说。你为什么不能理解中国的外交辞令？他们今天说的、明天说都不一样，这就是他的实用主义的这个，他已经坚持2000多年了，2、3千年了。
If you understand the pragmatic origin of Eastern philosophies, you will understand why the things that are currently happening in China is happening. And the examples we're talking about here, including the mass surveillance and mass control of citizens during lockdown, the control of their mobility by a QR code that is using the COVID control as a guise to really control people. This is very easy to see why this would happen, because in the current day in China, Xi Jinping and the Chinese government is the god, is the idol that people have either willingly made into or forcefully made it into an idol. This is pretty much this phenomenon right now is another cycle of Chinese history.
那我就如果用这个在实用主义这个领域里边，美国跟中国竞争，其实美国很难赢。
Okay. So, if in areas where the Western countries and Eastern countries are fighting, are competing, or in conflict with each other, if the fights are fought with pragmatism, then the Western countries are actually at a disadvantage.
我以2个故事来结束今天的我的这个说话。
So now I want to conclude my talk with 2 stories.
一个故事就是你为什么你不会赢？因为东方的实用主义无底线。
Okay. The first thing, not 2 stories, but two points. One point is why I say that in the competition of pragmatism, why the West will lose because the pragmatism of the Eastern countries, the Eastern civilizations have no bottom line.
就是在2500年前，中国有一个皇帝的一个齐国的一个国王的一个厨师叫易牙。
2,000 years ago,
2,500 years.
25 2,500 years ago, there was an imperial chef. His name was Ya.
他为了讨好他的这个皇帝，就他的国王这个神，他做的烹调手艺，他是非常非常好的。
To make his emperor happy, he cultivated, developed very extremely good culinary skills. Yeah.
那当他做了以后呢，这个皇帝就这个国王齐桓公呢，吃了很多很多的菜，但是就是最后就是想吃，问他想吃什么，他说想吃人肉。
So he cooked a lot of dishes for his emperor, and then his emperor is getting less impressed, and he said, "Okay, what do you want to eat? What do you want me to cook?" And the emperor said, "I want to eat human."
后来这个易牙第二天就把他的一个小婴儿小孩烹成了一道汤，送给了这个国王去吃。
So yeah, the next day he actually found a newborn baby and then made the baby into a soup dish and served it to the emperor.
这就是实用主义的无底线。
这是
真实故事。
This is a real historical story from Chinese history, and this is the basically the summarizing example of how the Eastern philosophies, the Eastern pragmatism can have no bottom line.
但是在旧约圣经里边也有一个故事，就是这个上帝要亚伯拉罕把他的儿子带去做献祭，但是给他路上有3天的时间，他可以反悔，他也可以不带去。
In Western civilization, there is a seemingly similar story on the surface, which is in the Old Testament. Abraham, the God told Abraham to sacrifice his own son, but God gave him 3 days to change his mind.
但是后来亚伯拉罕把他这个儿子带到了上帝那去，准备做献祭。这时候上帝说：“我要你的是你的信心，而不是要人的生命。”
But ultimately, Abraham did decide to sacrifice his son, and it's that time God stopped Abraham and said, "What I want is your faith, is your belief, but I do not want your son's actual life."
那这2个故事的话，其实你可以对比，一个是实用主义的，一个是关于信心的，就是说信心的牺牲。那这个是非常的不一样，它结局也不一样。那就是说，你可以看到，假如说我们要是放弃了你应该有的信仰，而要拾起这个就是实用主义的这一套做法，参与全球化的竞赛，我认为美国不会赢。
These 2 stories essentially symbolizes the Western idealism of human calling versus the Eastern's pragmatic approach toward human calling, and is because the stark difference that of these 2 approaches, and the lack of bottom line from the Eastern pragmatism. My father thinks that if the West continues his way on adopting pragmatism instead of conserving its own belief, its own version of human calling, then the West will not win and will not defend itself against the influence of Eastern philosophies.
因为在我看来，实用主义属于人的能够的范畴，不属于人的应当。
Because ultimately, pragmatism falls under human ability, and it is not in the realm of the human calling.
Yes, we have one question there. In your opinion, how has the pandemic changed people's belief in religion and or faith or a higher power?
pandemic 怎么影响了别人对这个神和神的人的信仰？
I think the pandemic can change somebody thinking about the faith. I believe that more people was recover, go back to the faith in the United States. Because that is a crisis. That's crisis that people think about is not it is most important for the winning, for the pragmatism. We were thinking about the people's the behavior, people's how to respond to God's calling.
Okay. And there was another question that came in about technology. And of course, nowadays we use so much electronic technology, and our human connection is not like it used to be. So how do you think the future of increased technology, less human interaction, how does that develop in with religion and faith?
I think that is a very big problem, in the future. But firstly, we cannot stop the technology because that is competition. We was live in the competitive world. So if we do not use technology, other people, other country, other company use the technology, so you are failed. So that is the competition. The technology development will always going forward. The first one. Second one, we was I think the technology was and advancement simultaneously to the spend much more the people's time, humans' time.
Technology and advertisement?
Yeah.
Advertisement.
Advertisement. Yeah, it's a way with people's energy and time. That is a big problem. Yeah. So, but I think the human is not totally different from the animal. Human have this there's some free will to control themselves. So I think they will need to awake to know more about how to respond to hope calling from God. The third thing, I think, is religions, the organization like church need to think about how to change their situation. Like the use electrical or use the new technology to communicate with the young generation. Yeah. That is to not just talk about in the traditional methodology to communicate with just old people, as young generation is in the outside of war. That is a big problem. So I think we need more people to try to change that is technology in the church and the religion activity. The fourth, government needed make some new policy to encourage the religion organization, like non-profit organization. So that is before it's charity and philanthropy activity, most donate from that is religion organization, but now less and less. most of the church organization just like some of the club. It's organized people to get together, amuse each other. So they will get going out church to involved in the philanthropy or the activity in the world, but the government can shoot a new policy to encourage the religion organization. So that is what I think about your question.
Thank you. Another question that has come in: if the West is becoming more pragmatic, will this give them an equal footing when dealing with the East?
I think that is no. That is no, because if you want to the competition with the Eastern, you needed firstly you needed the auditor or double check that is common regulation. Under the common regulation, you have transparency, the transparent regulation or the rules the competition can do. If there is no transparency information, it's hard.
你是说这个竞争规则是吧？
竞争规则。
Oh, he's saying
竞争规则还有信息透明度。
He's saying that for East and West to really compete on an equal footing, you need very transparent rules of the game. But right now, and transparency of information at different levels. So right now, the rule of the game that the Eastern countries, particularly China, and the Western country play with is not transparent. People are not playing by the same rules.
Yeah, big problem is that is if you the more pragmatism, your merchant or your entrepreneur, your Wall Street people go to China or go to Eastern, you will learn a lot of pragmatism. They will come back. They erode your foundation of the faith. That is in the long run the problem. But in short run, is in the like rules, like principle, the common regulations, the situation you will always deceived by other people, because I think the Western the people is mostly naive in the pragmatism field.
Yeah, so Western country will never be as pragmatic as the Eastern countries. If you go to the East and you learn, how to be very practical and pragmatic, and then you will use those new ways of doing things to erode the public trust in your own countries. But as you also see that all the Western companies or people who want to go compete naturally in Eastern countries with Eastern people, they ultimately always fail. They always get all competed by, how low they can get. Yeah.
Okay, and we had a follow-up from that question. And so the attendee is asking, so how then, in your opinion, do we begin to pursue world peace?
That is that's very the big problem. But that is for we look at this world, United Nations, that situation. So after war after Ukraine and Russia, do you think that the United Nations how to get going forward? I think it's hard for me to think about. It's one of 5 the China is Russia and the United States, French and Britain. Yeah, the 5 countries is a very important, most important member of the United Nations, but one decided to invade other small country they can do. If still keep Russia in this United Nations, I think it's not necessary for United Nations to still exist. But if we was fire Russia out of that is 5 members, who replace it? Ukraine? If Ukraine, it's very interesting. Maybe United Nations alive, but the peace maybe can get going to maintain. But I think it's a big challenge has happened since World War II in that situation. But if United Nations cannot play the role in that situation, I think the United States become its very most important role in this stage to keep peace. But if I don't think United States is a very, very important country. Yeah. #1 important country. If the United States, look at that is war. United States give up the role, important role, I think no peace in the world in the future. But if United States want to play the important role, they will think about you need to consolidate your foundation of God faith. Otherwise, you will fail in the future. That is my opinion. So for peace.
Right. So I think we could go on with a big discussion on that point, but we are just about out of time. And so I do want to thank you, Daofeng, for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us more about this very vast book that you have written about the human calling and how the connection with the East and West ideas of philosophy and other things give human the ability to serve and protect others. This book is available here at Gwinnett County Public Library as it is available at your area bookstores. So we encourage you to grab a copy and delve a little bit deeper into it. And again, thank you, all of you, for joining us this evening. And Mr. He, would you like to say any ending words?
Yeah, thank you so much for your very excellent host the program, the event, and thank you everyone who participated in this activity. I'm retired man. Now I live here. I worry about more. It's about the situation for this country. Yeah. So for this country is following my country's road, but I have warned more than 60 years before I retired to United States. I don't hope something wrong happened in the United States. I hope this country still play most important role in the world peace and development and the response to the calling from God.